Okay, so good day, class. This is a recorded session. This is part 4 for your coverage for your third and also sa final exam. So, let's proceed to recap on the topics that we have discussed last time. So, last time we have discussed on the types of informants. Ayan. The motives of informants and the steps to informant recruitment, starting with selection, the investigation, then down to the approach to the prospective agent or informant, and testing, which is testing them in real world situations or yung tinatawag na test missions. Okay? Also, we have discussed about collection disciplines in intelligence. Yan. Those are just some. Humint, imint, massint. Meron ding OSINT, SIGINT, which includes comment and ELINT. So, napakaraming disciplines na subfields which by the use of equipment specified sa kanilang discipline, we could collect vital intelligence or other information. We have also discussed about intelligence operation and the 14 operational cycles. We have also discussed about cover and undercover. So, cover and undercover, it involves specialization and training, and it is important because it is one of the most dangerous and, of course, one of the secretive missions of the police work or even the military. So, ayan, from cover story, and cover support up until to the importance and functions ng cover. We also discussed the types of cover. Yan, natural, artificial cover, cover within a cover, multiple covers. Yan. So, last time we have finished our discussions of precautions in case of compromise. So, ayan yun. By now, we would be starting to discuss on the organizational cover. Yan. So, what is an organizational cover? It is an account consisting of biographical data which, when adopted by an individual, he would assume the personality he wants to adopt. So, for short, merong collective adaptation yung mga miyembro ng organization or those agents and informers involved in the operation would adapt yung mga sarili-sarili nilang mga identities as a whole and to support one another. So the thing with this, merong mas madaling freedom or mas may freedom yung mga individuals involved na pumili ng kung ano mang gusto nilang identity na magamit nila as a cover. We say undercover assignment, it is an investigative technique in which an agent conceals his identity officially and obtain information from the enemy or from the target organization. So yung individuals na merong cover, they would be using them and they're already under the cover. Kaya tinatawag na undercover. Yan. So, napakaraming uses ng undercover assignment. Can be used independently to get first-hand information, and they would need to disseminate that information and analyze that information in order for it to become intelligence. Also, security evaluation of every installation. It is very important. Yan. So, when we say na nag so surveillance tayo or we are having an undercover towards a certain structure or a building, yan yung tinatawag na casing. So when we say casing, it is the surveillance or the observation of events and especially yung mga structures. For example, gusto mo malaman ano ang mga placement ng exits at mga rooms ng isang building, which is actually used by a criminal syndicate or of the enemies ng gobyerno. So, the term is casing, surveillance of those permanent structures or of those places. Yan. Sunod, the use of undercover assignment can gain in a significant confidence on suspended persons. It could um, make a better understanding if merong agent penetration sa nasabing structures. And it could verify info from human resources kung yung mga impormasyon na binigay nila, tinuod ba to or wala lang, haka-haka or hearsay. Yan. Of course, the use of undercover assignment also can be a playing ground for raids and searches by yung mga teams na known na, like for example, SWAT teams or yung mga special forces sa military in order to clear that certain structure or that certain building. Okay, so let's proceed to counterintelligence. So, counterintelligence is one of those subdivisions ng intelligence, a part of intelligence which refers to the efforts made by intelligence organizations to prevent hostile or enemy intelligence organizations and their agents to successfully gather and collect intelligence against the organization. So, kumbaga, ang counterintelligence, this is spying on spies. Piniprevent mo na yung impormasyon ng agency or organization ninyo makuha ng mga kalaban na gusto kumuha ng impormasyon laban sa inyo. That is counterintelligence. So counterintelligence is also known as negative intelligence. Yan. This kind of intelligence, yung mga activities dito, ang main purpose is actually to destroy the effectiveness ng kalabang organization and their operations or activities. So, piniprevent nito na makabigay ng impormasyon sa kalaban, piniprevent nito yung mga kalaban na makapasok sa organization nila, at piniprevent nito na yung mga agents ng nasabing agency ma-recruit ng kalabang organization or ng enemy. So, counterintelligence revolves around three main activities. So, yung negative intelligence has these three activities. First is protection of information against espionage. Yan, when we say espionage, may mga enemy agents na nakapasok sa facilities ng nasabing agency. Sabihin natin may nakapenetrate na rebelde sa kampo ng militar at nakakuha siya ng impormasyon. Yan. So that is espionage. In order to prevent it, merong counterintelligence. Yan. So to prevent those spies to penetrate even the facilities ng organization. One of the activities of counterintelligence also involves protection of personnel against subversion. So counterintelligence also is being used para maiwasan yung mga personnel. Sabihin natin for example, piniprevent ng counterintelligence sa kasundaluhan na merong mga sundalo na magsasubvert or kokontra, magkukudeta laban sa gobyerno. Pinoprotekta ng counterintelligence ang kanilang mga miyembro na mauto or malinlang at kumalaban sa gobyerno if they are in the military or law enforcement. And also, sa counterintelligence, it protects those installations like camps, forts, yung mga barracks, and yung mga kagamitan nila, mga weapons, against sabotage. Especially yung mga documents na nasa loob ng facilities, those are very important. So, kailangan maprotektahan din yung integrity nyon at yung location. So, that is one of the activities ng counterintelligence. So, the objectives of counterintelligence operations is to prevent sabotage, espionage, subversion, disaffection, treason, or pagtataksil, or sedition. Can be kudeta. Yan. So, para maiwasan na yung mga sundalo at mga pulis kumalaban sa kanilang gobyerno, there is counterintelligence. And of course, it is to prevent unwanted persons to penetrate inside the facilities of the government, especially yung mga military and police facilities. Also, counterintelligence denies the enemy of any information or knowledge pertaining to important documents or yung tinatawag na classified documents o yung mga impormasyon na nasa mga documents na yun. It also aids the activities to achieve surprise against criminal and subversive plans and activities. Kasi ang kasundaluhan at kapulisan would want the enemies to have shock and awe. Pagka nang makuratan sila and then di na sila ka-react tungod kay nakuratan sila sa operation ng kasundaluhan or sa mga pulis. So in order to maintain that surprise, surprise, yan, in order to maintain surprise sa kanilang mga operations, especially during raids or yung kanilang mga ginagawang operations clandestinely, para magulat yung mga kalaban at hindi na makareact dahil gulat sila, they need counterintelligence to maintain secrecy and surprise. And also, counterintelligence also can be able to detect disaffection against their own forces. Kumbaga, kumalaban ang mga kasundaluhan laban sa kanyang kapwa sundalo or sa mga pulis. Next, counterintelligence has these general types. First is passive measures. Those are measures which seek to conceal information from the enemy. For example, yung secrecy discipline, yung hindi sila pwedeng magsalita sa identity nila or sa nature ng ginagawa nila. Communication security or minimal lang na salita ang ginagamit or the use of codes and ciphers sa communication and the use of concealment and camouflage. That is passive measures. Yan. When we say passive measures, again, please take note of the term. Pag passive measures, seek to conceal information from the enemy. Yan. When we say active measures, these are measures na nagpo-block sa enemy actively to gain information against the organization. So kung sa government perspective pa o sa police, may mga active measures ang kapulisan para ma-block yung mga kalaban ng gobyerno na makakuha ng impormasyon laban sa kapulisan or sa government and to prevent subversion or espionage or even sabotage sa society. Yan. So for example, detection measures, prevention measures, yan. Or in-neutralize nila or mismo, they will take lives para tumahimik at hindi na magkaroon ng threat against the government. Take note, active measures, ang keyword niyan, seek actively in order to block the enemy's efforts to gain information. Yan. So those are two general types of counterintelligence. When we say counterintelligence operation or counterintelligence investigation, it is an activity that constitutes the value of counterintelligence workload. So it includes operations na conducted in a discrete or secret manner. Yan. So, hindi naman lang lahat secret manner, meron din mga overt manner. Kumbaga, sa publiko mo na may ginagawa kayo to protect the people pero hindi niyo sinasabi publicly kung sino ang involved at kung sino yung targets. So that's still part of counter intelligence operation. Next, there are three categories of counterintelligence measures. First is denial measure. From the word deny, para hindi ma, magkaroon ng access yung mga kalaban. And of course, kung tatanungin yung mga involved na mga personnel, ide-deny nila na merong nangyari. Kumbaga nothing happened. Secrecy discipline, hindi sila magsasalita. Document security, ika-classify nila yung documents. Sino yung secret, top secret, sino yung restricted, sino yung confidential. The use of camouflage and concealment para ma-hide yung kanilang shape at yung kanilang positions, especially on the field. Communication security to prevent those who are eavesdropping or using bugging devices para ma-penetrate at malaman yung pinag-communicate ng isang organization. Military censorship or yung tinatawag nila sa military na non-disclosure agreement. Yan. Non-disclosure agreement. So sa non-disclosure agreement, for example, merong special forces na sundalo na namatay sa isang clandestine operation. So ang ginagawa ng kasundaluan para hindi malaman ng karamihan ang nangyari, they would issue a non-disclosure agreement to the family na hindi nila sasabihin publicly na merong operation against these people and merong involved na sundalo na namatay. Yan. So, when we say camouflage, method of disguising people and things so as to look like the surroundings. So, kumbaga, you are disguising yourself the same with the surroundings. When we say concealment, it is hiding or keeping things. So, conceal, that is already understandable. Camouflage, again, disguising people. Okay, next, detection measure. So detection measure, it involves personnel security investigation, the use of security tags or yung mga passcards, yung mga IDs, the use of passwords, and the use of reconnaissance or yung pag-a-advance ng isang organization or meron sila ipapadalang mga tao who would survey the area before dumating yung main na puwersa. That is reconnaissance. Reconnaissance is a military term. When we say challenge or password, for example, mayroong sundalong papasok sa kampo, tatanungin siya yung guard o yung sentry sa kampo, what's the password? That is the challenge. At kung magbibigay siya ng password at tama yung password, then it is a successful challenge. That is part of detection measure. So reconnaissance, it is a survey or a close examination of an area obtaining useful information regarding enemy troops and their positions. That is a military term, itong reconnaissance. When we say deception measures, the use of escape and evasion. Kumbaga deception, pagpangilad. Yan. Dummy positions, fabricated information, false information. Yan. And the use of escape included sa deception measures. Yan also involves false information. The other categories of counterintelligence operation involves human, yan, counter-human seeks to overcome enemy attempts to use human sources to collect information. So, ang counter-human, piniprevent, for example, ng government forces na makakuha ng informants ang mga rebelde or ang mga kalaban within the government, especially sa military at law enforcement. Yan. So, with the use of counterintelligence special operations liaison, yan, counter security, and of course, yung ginagawa sa pag-enter sa isang facility, intelligence screening. When we say counter-image or counter-imagery intelligence, it involves actions taken to determine enemy signal intelligence. To determine kung meron bang ginagawa ang enemies, kung ma-determine yung kanilang locations through their signals or imagery, and to know the pattern of movements nila day or night. That is counter-imagery intelligence. And also, one of the categories of counterintelligence operations, yan, counter-SIG-int, determine enemy SIG-int, and assess friendly operations. So it is not just against the enemy, but also to determine asan yung position ng mga friendly forces at paano nila gagawin yung atake if there is. So, ayun. Those are the categories of counterintelligence operation. So if you have any questions, you can put it sa forum. So next topic I will discuss is about surveillance. So surveillance, what are their uses? Ano bang uses nila sa police work? So we'll be able to know. Surveillance is a form of clandestine observation of persons, places, and other targets in order to obtain evidence or information which is pertinent or important to a criminal investigation. So yung word na surveillance came from the French word sur and veiller, which becomes surveiller. Sur means above, while veiller means to watch or to watch as a whole. So, kung i-translate na in English, same as watching above or watching over. So also next, develop leads to vital information in order to obtain needs upon which to conduct additional investigation. This is done in order for the investigators to determine if it needs a deeper investigation pa or they are already satisfied sa mga impormasyon na nakalap nila. Also, it is also used to check on sources of information. Malay mo, ang sources of information ng isang informant false. Hindi tama, hindi totoo yung sinasabi. Yan. Next, to locate addresses or places frequently visited by the subject or target as well as his associates. Yan. For example, mga sindikato. Saang bar or hotel ba sila kadalasang pumupunta? Saan ba sila nakatira? Sino ba mga kasama pa nila? Next, to obtain detailed information about the nature and scope of subjects' activities. In order to do this, they need trusted personnel, those who are knowledgeable of surveillance. And of course, the surveillance is commonly used in order to secure a search warrant. So a search warrant is signed by the judge ordering a peace officer o yung law enforcer to search upon a certain place and search specific things on specific places. Para magkaroon ng search warrant and para ma-validate na kinakailangan talagang halugugin yung nasabing target area, they would conduct surveillance. And of course, surveillance, it is also done to provide protection. Yan. For example, darating si presidente dito sa Davao City. So, meron na siyang mga naunang agents, naunang mga personnel ng Presidential Security Group na magso-surveillance sa ruta na dadaanan ni Presidente. Whether it's on the ground, on the sea, or sa kanginan, in the air. So to provide advanced information and advanced protection, especially to those important people or to the public in general. Next are the conditions or considerations in surveillance planning. So everything starts with a plan. So in surveillance planning, what you need to do, pre-surveillance conference. It is a conference held among the team members, the police intelligence unit, and yung mga importanteng actors doon before surveillance is conducted. So magko-conference sila, they would determine sinong target, ano ang location somehow, or kung ano yung initial information. And then once they have finished the pre-surveillance conference, they would conduct a surveillance plan. So the surveillance plan, it must be foolproof at merong mga alternative options. And the specific tactics, specific instructions during the surveillance is also highlighted sa plano. Next up, area target study. So before they would conduct surveillance, they would also need to conduct further surveillance or area target study in order to know the terrain and to know the environment kung saan sila magpopondo or magsa-surveillance. Ang tawag sa mga involved sa surveillance, yung mga nagko-conduct ng surveillance, surveillant. And of course, ang surveillant is supported by decoys. Multiple decoys, much more secure. A decoy is somebody or something used to deceive or divert attention in order to lure somebody into a trap. Other terms also includes stakeout or plant. It's the observation of places or areas from a fixed point. Stake out, huh? Fixed point. Please take note. Fixed point from a place or area. When we say tailing or shadowing, it is the observation of a person's movement kung saan sinusundan mo yung target. Next is undercover agent. Ito yung tao na trained and member of the law enforcement or military who is under the cover. He can be able to penetrate the target organization and to know their suspected illegal activities and reports it yung mga observations nila na personally nakita nila or na-record nila, report it to higher office so that an operational action can be used to counter those illegal activities that were made. Of course, hindi kompleto ang surveillance kung walang safe house. Yan yung lugar na kung saan nagmi-meet up yung mga surveillance, yung mga undercover personnel for debriefing and somehow briefing. And para magre-report sila sa isa't isa or to higher office or higher headquarters. When we say drop, it is any convenient, secure, or unsuspecting na lugar na kung saan yung mga undercover agents pwede nilang i-pass yung information. For example, si informant may drop siya sa basurahan o yung drop niya yung basurahan. Hindi lahat ng tao, except sa basurero, nangangalkal ng bagay sa basurahan. So if the informant has a document na importante against an illegal activity, he will just drop it sa drop niya na basurahan, which predetermined ng agent handler at doon niya kukunin yung nasabing document. Yan. So it's unsuspecting. Next is convoy, an accomplice or associate of the subject used to avoid or elude the person who is following him, which is yung surveillance. Yan. So yan yung sumusunod. May sumusunod sa sumusunod. That is the convoy. Next is contact. These are any persons whom the subject picks or deals with while he is under observation. Yung mga nakakasalamuhan, nakakausap niya or mga kasama niya ng target individual or individuals, you call those people contacts. Yung sinabi ko kanina naman na you would be burned or made, that happens when yung taong sinusundan ninyo, yung subject or yung target, becomes aware na sinusundan nyo sila or ino-observe nyo sila. And of course, na-identify nila kayo. You are already burned. Nasusunog ka na. When the subject or yung target is lost, the surveillant does not know the whereabouts of the target or subject. Siguro nakatakas or na-distract si surveillant during surveillance operation. And that's the reason the subject was lost. So next, types of surveillance. So napakaraming types of surveillance. First, let's go according to intensity and sensitivity. Number one, discrete surveillance. Every effort is made to ensure na yung subject hindi niya talaga malalaman na merong sumusunod sa kanya. The primary consideration is that hindi pwedeng ma-burned or mabulilyaso yung mga undercover agents or yung surveillance. When we say close surveillance, it's maintaining constant observation of the subject or target regardless kung alam ng subject na sinusundan siya or hindi niya alam. In order to just follow him and to make sure na merong nakabantay sa kanya, whether alam niya or hindi, that is close surveillance. When we say loose surveillance, keyword ninyo, intermittent observation. It can be applied frequently or infrequently. Pwede ngayong araw may sumusunod sa kanya whole day and then bukas wala. Medyo loose, hindi constant. And it is varied on occasions. So, when we say types of surveillance according to the methods of surveillance, we have first stationary surveillance, the observation of a place, kung saan yung surveillance or observers does not move or get out of the place na kung saan sila nag-observe or nagso-surveillance. Yan. So for example, yung sino-surveillance nila hideout ng mga gamblers, and then yung lugar na kung saan sila nag-observe is yung kabilang building, yung building across. So, hindi sila gagalaw doon. They would stay there for days, weeks, or even months. Next, meron tayong moving surveillance method kung saan yung surveillance procedures involves following from place to place the target. Kung baga, si surveillant or yung agent, sinusundan everywhere yung target or yung subject. And of course, maintain continuous watch sa mga ginagawa ni subject. When we say technical method of surveillance, it is following the movements or actions ng target or subject with the use of communications equipment, with the use of cameras, and with the use of other gadgets and equipment na pwedeng makamonitor sa movements, sa salita, and location ng nasabing target or subject. So, pwede yung CCTVs. Yan. CCTVs, bugging devices, audio microphones, mini microphones, hidden cameras, yun, technical surveillance. So, considerations in the selection of a surveillant. Dapat yung surveillant na mare-recruit is a member of the organization. Yung loyalty niya, nandun sa, sabi natin, sa government, and he has this following criteria kung saan pasado siya. He has ins- inconspicuous physical character, kumbaga, hindi siya nagkakaroon ng sakit physically, mentally, and emotionally. He has the ability to remain unnoticed or hindi siya nakaka-gain ng attention. He is resourceful even if wala masyadong equipment or support or interest sa ginagawa niya, he still continues to do it and develops alternatives. He is very much patient and has physical stamina that is already developed through time and training. Of course, good memory and sensory perception. There will be times na yung information galing sa mga casual na talks, casual na pag-uusap. So, dapat meron siyang memory na parang may malaki na siyang storage device which is his brain. Of course, driving ability, not just sa motor, but of every vehicle na somehow may alam talaga siya. Cars, trucks, vans, motorcycles, yun. There are even others na trained mag-operate ng mga boats or even aircraft. Of course, personal courage na kahit anong mangyari, kailangan gawin niya yung operation. Of course, area knowledge. So, before siya mag-ooperate, kailangan alam na niya yung terrain, yung lugar as a whole. Hindi pwedeng kanang pataka ra siya dasmag. Delikado kaya na. Of course, security consciousness. He knows the type of security measures na ginagamit ng target organization. Meron ba silang mga security guards? Marami ba silang CCTVs and others? And of course, he knows the procedures in administrative and logistics. Alam niya paano nag-ooperate ang sistema. So for example, sa mga intelligence agents ng gobyerno, dapat alam nila ang kalakaran from the executive, sa president, sa legislative, sa mga congressmen at senators, or even the judiciary, sa mga justices at sa batas. At dapat alam niya yung paano nag-ooperate yung kanilang organization, paano ina-administer. Okay? So those are the considerations in selecting a surveillance. So next, dito na tayo sa techniques. Sa pinaka-basic form of surveillance, yung shadowing, tailing, or yung foot surveillance. So merong four general techniques. In my experience, when I was in the field, hindi lang apat ang techniques na ina-adapt, but these are the four general techniques that are taught basically to those surveillance or yung mga nagsusurveillance. Yan. So, these are the four general techniques. A technique, that's one man utilization. AB technique, two personnel utilization. ABC is third, yung three techniques with three personnel. And progressive method, yung hindi continuous. Yan. So, let's go there one by one. Sa ABC technique, of course, this is the subject, letter S, and then si letter A. Yan yung primary na sinusunod. Kung liliko si subject to the left, then kung si surveillant A, in order for him not to be burned out, he will proceed to an alternate route para si B naman yung magiging A. And then si C would follow B. Yan. And then mahuhuli si A. Of course, yung one-man technique, si A lang. Two-man technique, AB. Yan. So, yan yung ABC technique. So, when we say progressive method, yun yung sinabi ko na hindi pwede si surveillant A lang ang parating nasa likod. Because the subject, makaka-notice na siya na, oy, matagal na akong sinusundan ni A. So, kailangan pabago-bago. ABC technique, ABCD technique, kung saan apat na sila, or progressive method, or yung tinatawag na leapfrog. Itong progressive method is also known as the leapfrog method of surveillance. Progressive method. Kumbaga, for example dito, balik tayo. Si surveillant A, siya yung nauna, and then by the time na magto-turn to the right corner, yan, papalitan siya ni B. And then si A would go back, magde-delay, susundan ni si B. And then they would shuffle their positions para hindi magkaroon ng burned out na agent. Other counter surveillance techniques includes window shopping. Yan. So, in order na hindi mahalata ni subject yung ginagawa nyo, magpanggap kayo na parang nagsha-shopping kung merong mall na malapit or merong boutique na para lang gud mailad, na para lang dili ma-obvious. Yan. Paper drop. Yan. What if si surveillant yung kanina parang nanonotice na ni subject. So, ang gawin nyo para makakuha ng diversion or ma-divert yung attention, drop your paper kung may dala kayong documents. What if parang sinusundan na rin yung mga surveillance? So, you retrace your course. Balikan nyo. Yan, ikutan nyo. Na tuyukan ninyo. And then, for example, stopping immediately after turning the street corner. For example, dito, wala na tong si BNC, one-man method tayo. Pero sinusundan si A ng kakosa ni subject. Yan, si S1. So, para hindi masundan pa ni S1 si A, okay na lang na mabitawan si subject because yung safety niya ang concern. So, he would turn the corner and immediately titigil si A. So, susundan niya ni S1. Pero magugulat na lang si S1 na bakit siya ang nauna. Or magugulat na lang si S1 na burned out siya ni surveillant A. So, also, meron ding mga methods such as watching persons getting on succession of conveyances, yan, and suddenly leaving a public conveyance. Yung bigla ka na lang magre-retreat. And of course, for safety purposes, the use of convoys. So, I would end my meeting, my session sa counter surveillance techniques. Next meeting, we would be discussing the uh, parts ng intelligence report. And of course, we will discuss casing and its general principles and methods. So once again, this session is recorded. You can view this in my YouTube account and in my LMS um, uh, sources. Yan. So, isi-share ko lang to doon. So once again, thank you and have a good day to everyone.